What if the biggest scandal in sister wives history was never just about an online lie? What if it was something far more personal, far more calculated, and hiding in plain sight for years? For nearly a decade, fans whispered theories, timelines didn't add up, and questions were ignored. But now, Meri Brown is finally speaking, and what she's revealing changes everything. Stay with me, because once you hear how this story really unfolds, you'll realize the truth may have been inside the family all along. For years, the audience believed they understood the story of what happened to Meri Brown. They believed it was a simple situation: a lonely wife, emotional neglect, and an online deception that spiraled out of control. But as time has passed, and as Meri herself has begun to speak with more clarity, the story no longer feels simple at all. It feels layered, uncomfortable, and deeply unsettling. Because the more you examine the timeline, the relationships, and the emotional fallout, the harder it becomes to accept that everything unfolded by chance. The catfishing incident was presented as an isolated online event, but what viewers are now realizing is that it may have been the moment where everything behind the scenes finally surfaced, where long-standing tensions, quiet power struggles, and fragile trust collided at once. Meri has always been portrayed as someone who internalized pain, who stayed quiet, who minimized her own hurt, and who accepted blame even when the situation was far more complex. But this season reveals a different energy, a woman no longer willing to carry silence for the sake of peace, and that change alone alters how every past moment should be viewed. When Meri describes how the online connection began, she does not describe recklessness. She describes emptiness, a desire for conversation, validation, and companionship that she was not receiving in her marriage. She speaks about laughter, about feeling heard, about feeling seen, and those details matter because emotional vulnerability does not appear out of nowhere. It grows in environments where needs are consistently unmet. At the time, communication between Meri and Cody had already broken down. They were struggling deeply, and the distance between them was no secret. Yet what Meri believed she still had was trust in at least one person within the family, someone she could confide in without fear of judgment, and that person was Robin. According to Meri, she shared information with Robin that she did not share with anyone else. Private conversations, fears, doubts, and details about the person she believed she was talking to online. And she believed those conversations stayed between them, because that is what trust is supposed to mean. But slowly, something began to feel wrong. Details she had never spoken aloud suddenly seemed known by others. Moments she thought were private became public reactions, and the online figure seemed to know things that could only have come from someone close. This created a growing sense of unease that Meri could not explain at the time. She asked Robin repeatedly to stop sharing information. She insisted that talking to others was making the situation worse. She expressed that the constant discussion was not helping, but the sharing continued. And that is where the emotional damage deepened. Because once trust is broken, the wound does not heal quietly, it festers. Meri now says that the only person she had these specific conversations with was Robin, and yet the information reached both Cody and the online individual. That reality raises questions that were never addressed on the show. How did that information travel? Why did it continue despite requests to stop? And why did the consequences fall so heavily on one person while others appeared untouched? For years, the family narrative framed Meri as a victim of an online hoax. Yet later, Cody reframed the situation as an emotional affair, a shift that completely changed how Meri was perceived and treated. That change in language mattered because it justified emotional withdrawal, it validated distance, and it gave Cody a reason to stop trying entirely. The catfishing incident became the permanent explanation for why the marriage was over, even though the cracks existed long before it happened. What makes this especially difficult to ignore is the timing. In the fall of 2014, Meri legally divorced Cody, a decision framed as a sacrifice for the family to allow the adoption of Robin's children. Only months later, Cody and Robin were legally married, and shortly after that, the catfishing scandal became public. The sequence of events created a perfect storm. Mary lost her legal status, her emotional connection, and her standing within the family, all within a short period of time, and the scandal ensured that she could never recover it. From a viewer perspective, the timing feels too precise, too convenient, and too beneficial for certain dynamics to ignore. This is where years of fan speculation comes into play, because audiences noticed how quickly Mary was pushed to the margins, how little effort was made to repair the relationship, and how completely the narrative turned against her. The catfishing incident did not just damage her reputation, it neutralized her role within the family hierarchy. It removed her as a threat and solidified a new structure where power and emotional authority were concentrated elsewhere. And while none of this was stated outright, the outcomes speak loudly. Mary was left isolated, blamed, and emotionally frozen, while others moved forward unchallenged. The show moved on without addressing the deeper implications, leaving viewers with unanswered questions that lingered for nearly a decade. Now, with Mary finally expressing how deeply betrayed she felt, those questions feel unavoidable, because betrayal does not come from strangers. It comes from proximity, from people you trust, from those you believe are safe. This is not about proving malicious intent. It is about acknowledging that information shared in confidence was handled in ways that caused lasting harm, and that harm reshaped everything that followed. When viewers look back now, they see moments differently. The way conversations were framed, the way concern was expressed, the way sympathy was selectively offered. All of it feels heavier, knowing that Mary felt exposed from the inside, not just attacked from the outside. The catfishing story was never just about an online deception. It was about what happens when emotional vulnerability meets broken trust and shifting power. And once that collision occurred, there was no going back. The damage was irreversible, and the silence that followed only deepened it. This is why the story still resonates, because it represents something larger than a scandal. It represents how easily a narrative can be controlled, how quickly blame can be assigned, and how devastating it is when someone realizes too late that the people they relied on most may have played a role in their downfall. As the story continues to unfold, what becomes more disturbing is not just what may have happened, but how consistently the consequences aligned in one direction. Mary did not simply lose trust, she lost her footing within the family structure. And once that happened, there was no path back. Every interaction after the catfishing carried the weight of suspicion, judgment, and distance, and the family never truly recalibrated to support her healing. Instead, the narrative quietly shifted and solidified into something far more permanent. Mary became the example, the cautionary tale, the one whose mistake justified years of emotional neglect and exclusion. Cody no longer had to confront his role in the breakdown of the marriage because the focus remained fixed on Mary's actions rather than the environment that led to them. And that environment matters because emotional withdrawal does not happen in a vacuum. It builds slowly through years of unmet needs, unequal attention, and unbalanced priorities. When Mary says she felt lost, she is describing more than confusion. She is describing a woman who no longer recognized her place in a family she helped build. What complicates this even further is the involvement of outside connections that appear repeatedly in fan discussions, particularly a close friend of Robin's who allegedly interacted with the same online figure and reassured Mary of that person's authenticity. If this reassurance occurred, it would have reinforced the illusion from a real-world source, making the deception far more convincing. This detail has never been confirmed on the show, but its persistence in off-camera accounts, combined with Mary's admission that Robin knew about the online relationship, raises serious questions about how much awareness existed before the scandal became public. The idea that Mary was navigating this situation with guidance from someone she trusted while unknowingly being exposed from multiple angles creates a deeply unsettling picture because it suggests manipulation layered on top of vulnerability. The online figures seemed to know intimate details about Mary's life, details that made the connection feel destined and personal, and Mary herself has said that it reached a point where she wondered how that information was being accessed. Whether through shared conversations or indirect channels, the result was the same. Mary felt watched, cornered, and increasingly dependent on the very people she believed were helping her. This is why so many viewers now feel the official explanation was incomplete. Because random online deception alone does not explain the precision of the fallout. It does not explain how quickly the family closed ranks or how decisively Mary was sidelined. It does not explain why her requests for privacy were ignored or why the emotional consequences were never truly addressed. The silence surrounding these questions allowed assumptions to harden, and once they did, Mary was trapped inside a version of the story she did not fully control. Over time, her attempts to downplay the incident were interpreted as avoidance rather than survival. But now, it is clear that minimizing may have been the only way she knew how to cope with overwhelming shame and isolation. When someone is blamed repeatedly, they often stop defending themselves, not because they agree, but because resistance feels futile. And that is exactly what viewers witnessed for years. Mary accepted her role quietly, while the family dynamic shifted permanently around her. Meanwhile, Robin's position within the family grew stronger emotionally, legally, and narratively. She became the mediator, the trusted voice, the one whose perspective carried weight. And again, this does not prove intention, but it does reveal outcome. Every major turning point after the catfishing moved in her favor, while Mary remained frozen in place. Fans are careful to frame this as analysis rather than accusation, because intent cannot be proven, but patterns can be observed, and the pattern here is difficult to dismiss. When Mary finally speaks now, she does not sound confused. She sounds resolved. She is not speculating, she is describing how it felt to realize that private conversations did not stay private, that warnings were ignored, and that trust was misplaced. That realization alone is enough to fracture any relationship permanently, and in Mary's case, it fractured several at once. The tragedy is not just that she was deceived online, but that she felt unsupported and exposed within her own family. The emotional cost of that experience lingered for years, shaping how she interacted, how she withdrew, and how she was perceived. And this is why the story continues to resonate with viewers, because it reflects something universal: the pain of realizing too late that the people you trusted most may not have protected you when it mattered. The catfishing was not just an incident, it was a catalyst that revealed deeper issues of loyalty, power, and communication. And once those issues were exposed, they could not be ignored. Whether viewers believe every theory or not, it is now impossible to view the past through the same lens, because Mary's voice has shifted the conversation from what happened to why it mattered. And that shift changes everything. After years of silence, the pieces are finally coming together, and the story we thought we knew no longer feels complete. Whether this was coincidence, miscommunication, or something far more intentional, one thing is clear: Mary's trust was broken, and the impact reshaped the family forever. Now, the real question isn't what happened back then, but what we're finally willing to see now. Let me know your thoughts, because this conversation is far from over.